Good afternoon, Synthesists. I hope you are well. Today we wanted to talk to you about rack mount effects units and some of the similarities but also the differences between how you hook them up and use them versus modern pedals. Recently, a YouTuber, Jorb, whose channel you should check out if you haven't already, did a video called the Synthesists Guide to Guitar Pedals, and I found that a lot of the information in that video was extremely helpful and also not really compiled in any one place. And if somebody's new to synthesis and they want to add effects to their signal chain, sometimes it could be a little daunting and confusing because there are different voltages and input cable types and unbalanced and balanced. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So today I wanted to do something somewhat similar, but focus specifically on rack mount effects units because I think, like pedals, someone who is new might steer away from the rack mount options just because they haven't used them before and aren't familiar with them, and especially older ones can have some weird ways that you have to connect them, or at least verbiage that's not as standard today. So here we have a Korg SDD-3000 delay, and right up above it is an Eventide H9 pedal, modern pedal. And I just wanted to quickly show you the differences in how you wire something like this or connect it to your mixer or interface via balanced and unbalanced cables. So although we're referring to a specific model here, the Korg SDD-3000, what I'm going to tell you will apply to many different effects units, as there are different ways to hook them up. Some of them are mono input, like this one is here. Some of them will use balance jacks, like in the newer equipment, whereas this older example only uses unbalanced jacks. But the output specifically can be a little bit confusing because the way Korg set this up, which is common in other effects units like those from Lexicon, the older ones, they will have labels like direct, positive mix, negative mix, or mono mix. And how do you hook that up in a modern home studio environment, for example? So the way Korg recommends that you hook this up, if you're in, say, a recording studio of any type, is that you use it with stereo outs, with one output, the direct going to one channel, and like the left channel, and then the positive mono mix going to the other channel, like the right channel. And they specifically want you to do that because if the recording that you're working on is ever going to be played back in mono, using these two outputs can cause problems because they are signals that are directly or 180 degrees out of phase with one another. So in practice today, since a lot of times, we're specifically recording in stereo and not recording music for the possibility that it might be played back in mono. So you can effectively use these two today. Just understand that, again, they're just directly inverted signals and they will cancel each other out if they are summed back together. But you could also effectively use these two as well. And in either case, you're going to want to pan the left and the right channels to some extent until you find that sweet spot. But you can really get some amazing effects when you use stereo outs on an old digital delay like this. So the main reason I wanted to talk about this today, or that there's two reasons, is cost and capability. And with modern effects pedals, most of them, they'll serve one or a couple of purposes. You'll have a delay pedal like the Timeline or a reverb pedal like the Big Sky. And there are pedals that are multi-effects pedals like the H9 that can do different algorithms, different types of effects, but it can still only run one algorithm at a time. And there are several low-cost vintage rack mount effects units in existence that can do a lot more than that and be a lot more flexible and in fact chain different effects algorithms in series or in parallel that you can adjust at your heart's delight. Effects units like the Alesis Quadra Reverb series, the Yamaha SPX series, the Roland SRV series and SDE series, are all effects units that you can have for just a couple of $100. Now my point is not at all to dog on effects pedals. They certainly have their place, and there's a ton of legendary ones. But when we're talking about cost versus value, it's always good to be able to look at all of your options, and I think there's a population of people out there that avoid rack effects just because they're not as familiar with them. And when we're talking about some of the costs of modern guitar pedals, like the ones you see from Strymon in front of you, those are going to run $500 plus, and then the CXM 1978 is closer to $900. And when we talk about budgets like that and the value that you can get out of a vintage effects unit in a similar price range, you might get a lot more out of it, and they sound absolutely fantastic. I'm specifically referring to effects units like the Ensoniq DP4 and DP4 Plus, any of the Lexicon PCM series, PCM 41, 42, 60, PCM 70, PCM 80. They're really great units out there that you can find, and even this SDD-3000 can be found for under $1,000 if you're talking about competitors like the CXM 1978. Another big point I wanted to mention is space and how much space each unit takes up. And your initial reaction might say, well, the rack units are far larger than your typical pedal, but being able to organize them in a space is critical. And the fact is that pedals are pretty cumbersome, especially when you talk about wiring them up, especially when you have multiple units. Rack mount effects, on the other hand, as you can see here, can be organized and placed into a space that you might not have otherwise used, like underneath a table. And this little rack is sitting right next to where my chair is, so it's very easy to reach down and make adjustments as needed. Pedals, on the other hand, either have to be placed on a dedicated pedal board, which is really required if you want to keep it organized, because you can tuck the cables behind the board and behind the units. But if you don't have that sort of setup, your pedals are going to take up an entire desk space, whereas, as you can see here, the racks are simply stacked up in a neat fashion underneath the desk. We hope you enjoyed this video today featuring the JX3P and several rack mount effects units. And we're just going to play you out real quick. Hope to see you again soon.
More.